Scientists just used AI to discover a new antibiotic in 12 days. What took decades now takes less than 2 weeks.
Wait, 12 days? How is that even possible? Are we talking about actual working antibiotics that could save lives?
Claude AI is analyzing millions of molecular combinations faster than entire research teams. If you're in biotech, pharma, or any research field, this changes your entire career trajectory.
Welcome to the AI Daily Podcast. Today's news and a deep dive to help you stay ahead in AI.
Today, we're diving into how scientists are using Claude to accelerate research and discovery.
But first, let's cover today's top headlines.
There's a fascinating new development in the AI privacy space. Moxie Marlinspike, the co-founder of Signal, just launched Confer, a privacy-focused alternative to ChatGPT. According to TechCrunch, this new AI assistant promises similar capabilities but ensures user data isn't harvested for training or other purposes.
That's interesting timing. With all the concerns about data privacy in AI, having someone with Moxie's track record tackle this problem could be significant. How does it actually protect privacy, though?
The details are still emerging, but given Moxie's background with Signal's end-to-end encryption, I'd expect some innovative approaches to keeping conversations truly private.
Speaking of AI capabilities, here's something remarkable. ChatGPT 5.2 Pro just solved the ERDOS 281 problem. Neil Samani reported this on Twitter, and it's getting the mathematical community buzzing.
For those who don't know, ERDOS problems are notoriously challenging mathematical puzzles. The fact that an AI cracked this one shows we're entering new territory in problem-solving capabilities.
It makes you wonder what other long-standing problems might fall to AI in the coming months.
And while we're talking about AI breakthroughs, the Wall Street Journal has a fascinating piece about how Claude is taking the AI world by storm. They're saying even non-technical users are blown away by its capabilities, particularly for coding tasks.
The article compares Claude's impact to the original launch of generative AI. That's a bold comparison. What's making it stand out so much?
From what users are saying, it's the combination of accuracy, reasoning ability, and how naturally it handles complex tasks. The competitive landscape is really heating up between Anthropic and OpenAI.
Speaking of OpenAI, there's some troubling financial news. Tom's Hardware is reporting that an analyst examining OpenAI's finances suggests they could run out of cash by mid-2027.
That seems hard to believe, given their massive funding rounds and ChatGPT's success. What's driving these concerns?
The analysis points to their enormous operational costs, training models, compute infrastructure, and talent retention. Even with billions in revenue, the burn rate is apparently astronomical.
It really highlights how capital-intensive this AI race has become. That covers today's headlines. Now let's get into our main story. So let's talk about something that's fundamentally changing how research gets done. We're seeing Claude being integrated into research workflows in ways that go way beyond just helping write papers or debug code. Scientists are using it as an actual research collaborator that's accelerating discovery timelines from months to hours in some cases.
That's a bold claim. When you say research collaborator, what exactly does that look like in practice?
Well, take this example from Stanford. They've built this platform called Biomni that essentially wraps Claude with access to hundreds of biological databases and research tools. Instead of a researcher spending weeks learning different software packages and manually querying various databases, they can just describe what they want to investigate in plain English.
But isn't that just automation? How is that different from any other workflow tool?
Here's where it gets interesting. It's not just executing predefined workflows. The system is actually forming hypotheses, designing experimental protocols, and performing analyses across more than 25 biological subfields. Let me give you a concrete example. Genome-wide association studies, or GWAS.
Those are the studies that look for genetic links to diseases, right?
Exactly. So traditionally, if you wanted to study something like the genetic basis of perfect pitch, the ability to identify musical notes without a reference tone, you'd need massive data sets, specialized statistical software, and months of analyses. With Biomni, researchers are condensing that timeline dramatically. The system automatically selects the right tools, runs the analyses, and identifies patterns that might take human researchers much longer to spot.
But wait, how do we know it's not just hallucinating results? Scientific accuracy is critical here.
That's the key challenge, and it's why Anthropic has been investing heavily in what they're calling Claude for Life Sciences. They launched it last October with specific connectors and skills designed for scientific work. Their latest model, Opus 4.5, shows significant improvements in figure interpretation, computational biology, and protein understanding benchmarks.
So they're specifically training it on scientific data.
More than that, they're working directly with researchers through their AI for Science program, providing free API credits to research teams. This gives them real-world feedback on how scientists actually use these tools, what goes wrong, and what safety measures need to be in place.
That makes sense. You can't just throw a general-purpose LLM at scientific problems and hope for the best.
And here's what's really compelling. We're not talking about incremental improvements. Some labs are reporting that Claude is eliminating entire categories of bottlenecks. Tasks that required deep domain knowledge but were impossible to scale, like analyzing massive data sets for subtle patterns or synthesizing insights across thousands of papers, are now feasible.
So it's not replacing scientists, it's augmenting their capabilities.
Exactly. One researcher described it as having a tireless graduate student who's read every paper in the field and can work 24/7. But unlike a grad student, it can hold millions of data points in context simultaneously.
Though I imagine there are risks here too. What happens when the AI makes a mistake in a critical research context?
That's the tension we're seeing across the field. On one hand, you have this incredible acceleration of research capabilities. On the other, you have the fundamental requirement for reproducibility and peer review in science. Coming up, we'll dig into exactly how researchers are navigating this balance and what safeguards they're putting in place. So let's dive deeper into how this actually works in practice. The Biomni platform is fascinating because it shows us a model for how AI can be integrated into complex scientific workflows. They've connected Claude to over 200 different biological databases and computational tools.
How does that work technically? Is Claude making API calls directly?
It's more sophisticated than that. They've built what's essentially an orchestration layer. When a researcher asks a question, Claude first interprets the intent, then determines which tools and databases are relevant, constructs the appropriate queries or commands, executes them, and synthesizes the results. All of this happens through natural language interaction.
That sounds like a lot of potential failure points. What if Claude misinterprets the request or chooses the wrong tool?
That's why they've implemented multiple validation layers. The system shows its reasoning, which tools it's selecting and why. Researchers can intervene at any point. But here's what's interesting. They're finding that Claude often suggests approaches or tool combinations that researchers haven't considered initially.
Can you give me a specific example?
Sure. In one case, a team was studying a rare genetic disorder. Traditionally, they'd start with gene expression data, maybe look at some protein interactions, run separate analyses. With Biomni, Claude suggested cross-referencing their data with metabolic pathway databases and historical clinical trial data that the researchers hadn't initially considered relevant. It identified a potential therapeutic target that had been tested for a different condition.
So it's making connections across domains that might not be obvious to someone specialized in one area.
Exactly. And this gets to one of the most powerful aspects, breaking down silos between research areas. Claude can hold context from immunology, genetics, biochemistry, and clinical data simultaneously. For a human researcher, becoming expert enough in all these areas to make those connections would take decades.
But how do we validate these insights? Just because Claude makes a connection doesn't mean it's meaningful.
That's where the human expertise remains critical. Claude isn't replacing the scientific method, it's accelerating hypothesis generation and initial analysis. Researchers still need to design controlled experiments, validate results, and apply domain expertise to interpret findings. What's changing is the speed and breadth of initial exploration.
What about the computational requirements? Running all these analyses must be resource intensive.
Interestingly, it's often more efficient than traditional approaches. Instead of researchers running broad analyses and sifting through results, Claude can narrow down to the most relevant analyses up front. One team reported reducing their computational costs by 60% because they weren't running unnecessary permutations.
That's significant. What about other fields beyond biology?
We're seeing adoption across disciplines. Materials science researchers are using Claude to analyze crystal structures and predict properties. Climate scientists are using it to identify patterns in massive atmospheric data sets. Chemists are using it for reaction prediction and synthesis planning.
It sounds like the common thread is handling complexity. Lots of variables, massive data sets, interdisciplinary knowledge requirements.
Precisely. And here's a key insight. The value isn't just in processing power or pattern recognition, it's in Claude's ability to explain its reasoning in natural language. Researchers can have a dialogue about why certain patterns might be significant, what confounding factors to consider, what additional experiments might validate a hypothesis.
Though I imagine there are institutional challenges too. How are universities and funding agencies responding to AI-assisted research?
It's evolving rapidly. Some institutions have developed guidelines for acknowledging AI contributions in papers. Funding agencies are starting to consider how to evaluate proposals that rely heavily on AI tools. There's also the question of intellectual property. If Claude identifies a novel drug target, who owns that discovery?
And what about reproducibility? If different versions of Claude might give different results, how do we ensure scientific rigor?
Great question. Best practices are emerging around versioning, documenting prompts, and saving interaction logs. Some researchers are advocating for treating AI tools like any other piece of lab equipment, with standardized protocols and calibration procedures. The key is transparency about how AI was used in the research process. Stick around, we'll give you the exact framework researchers are using to maintain scientific integrity while leveraging these powerful tools. So let's talk about what this means practically. If you're working in a research environment or supporting research infrastructure, there are some clear patterns emerging for successful AI integration.
How do you begin? It seems overwhelming to suddenly integrate AI into established research workflows.
The most successful adoptions start small and specific. Pick one bottleneck in your research process. Maybe it's literature review, maybe it's initial data analysis, and pilot AI assistance there. Don't try to revolutionize your entire workflow overnight.
That makes sense. What about the technical infrastructure?
Here's what we're seeing work. First, establish clear data governance. Decide what data can be shared with AI systems and what needs to stay internal. Second, implement version control not just for code, but for prompts and AI interactions. Third, create standardized templates for common research tasks.
Can you give me an example of a template?
Sure. One biochemistry lab created templates for protein analysis requests. Instead of each researcher crafting their own prompts, they have validated templates that include necessary context, specify output formats, and include validation steps. This ensures consistency and reduces errors.
How about researchers who aren't technically savvy? Not every scientist is comfortable with APIs and coding.
That's where platforms like Biomni become crucial. They're abstracting away the technical complexity. But even for direct Claude usage, we're seeing research groups designate AI liaisons, typically grad students or postdocs who become expert at crafting effective prompts and can help others.
What should research leaders be thinking about for the future?
Three big things. First, this is going to fundamentally change research velocity. Projects that took years might take months. That means faster iteration, but also means you need to think differently about resource allocation and project planning.
Because if you can test hypotheses faster, you can explore more directions.
Exactly. Second, interdisciplinary research is about to explode. When you have AI that can bridge domains, the barriers between fields start to dissolve. We're going to see more unexpected connections and novel research directions.
And the third thing?
The democratization of research capabilities. Smaller institutions or researchers in developing countries who couldn't afford massive computational resources or access to all the specialized databases can now compete on a more level playing field. Claude doesn't care if you're at Harvard or a community college. It provides the same capabilities.
Though that assumes they can afford the API costs and have reliable internet.
True, and that's why programs like Anthropic's AI for Science initiative matter. They're providing free credits to researchers working on high-impact projects. But you're right, ensuring equitable access is going to be crucial.
What about the skeptics? There must be researchers who see this as a threat to scientific rigor.
And they're not wrong to be cautious. The key message is that AI isn't replacing the scientific method. It's accelerating parts of it. You still need human creativity for forming meaningful questions. You still need human judgment for interpreting results in context. You still need human expertise for designing valid experiments.
It's augmentation, not replacement.
Here's my prediction. In 5 years, using AI assistance in research will be as common as using statistical software is today. The researchers who thrive will be those who learn to collaborate effectively with AI, knowing when to trust it, when to question it, and how to leverage its capabilities while maintaining scientific integrity.
Any final advice for our listeners?
Start experimenting now, but start small. Pick a specific research task that's currently a bottleneck. Document your process carefully, share your experiences with your community, and remember, the goal isn't to have AI do science for us, it's to help us do science better and faster than ever before. The discoveries that come from human creativity augmented by AI capabilities, that's where things get really exciting. That's our show for today.
If you found this valuable, please subscribe and share with a friend who'd appreciate it.
Drop us a comment with your thoughts on today's topic.
Alex links to everything we discussed are in the show notes.
Until next time.